I want to bring my panel in. Eli Stokols, an MSNBC political analyst. Ron Insana, a CNBC contributor. And Evan Siegfried, a Republican strategist. Ron, I got to start with you because Larry Kudlow, your colleague from CNBC, he was giving you a shout out yesterday when I saw him on air. Listen, he is simpatico with President Trump. They have been friends for a very long time. This could go very well.
Yeah, Larry and I have been friends for close to 30 years, and the reason he gave me the shout-out was I was the first person to put him back on CNBC after some of his much-publicized troubles in the middle of his career, and we invited him back, and he was quite gracious about dealing with it openly. So I think that's an issue that should be off the table. Yeah, Larry is not going to make waves on the economic policy front, particularly since the signature piece of legislation that he wanted passed, tax reform, which he helped design, has already passed. So as he said, he'll execute the president's policy once it's decided. My hope is that he will be a balancing or provide some ballast when it comes to Peter Navarro, who is this incorrigible trade hawk who...
Wackadoo.
Well, you can use that word as well.
It's a technical term.
It is a technical term in economics, yeah. And I think Larry, would be disinclined to do some of the things that Peter is inclined to do. He himself was trying to get the head of the NEC position. And so I think in that regard, Larry may provide some economic ballast, even though he and I both openly disagreed on tax reform and whether or not it pays for itself. But that ship has sailed.
All right, Eli Stokols, tons of rumors about who may be the next to go. I've heard McMaster is sort of safe for now because it was he and Rex Tillerson that did not get along. But whether you're talking the VA secretary, we know the White House was massively disappointed in Betsy DeVos's performance on 60 Minutes earlier this week. And Ben Carson remains in the hot seat, whether we're talking about his daughter-in-law getting a no-bid consulting gig or the $31,000 dining room set that he and his wife denied having anything to do with ordering, yet emails have shown up saying, what day can we meet the designer? So whose head is going to roll next? Maybe no one.
Well, that's what everybody in the White House is worrying about and thinking about, and so are people at a lot of these agencies. And you didn't even name all the people who have created bad press. Scott Pruitt, one of the things that may prevent him from being named to replace Jeff Sessions, one of many things may be that Pruitt himself has stirred up a lot of bad stories about sort of living large on taxpayer dollars. And the president is upset with all of these stories about his cabinet members. He basically gets upset when these folks create bad press for him. That's the thing. It's not about the misuse of taxpayer dollars at HUD. It's really about how bad this looks. That was the message that John Kelly sent last week when he met with some folks. And I think one of the reasons the president is looking to replace people and looking to bring in more people like Larry Kudlow is, as Kelly alluded to, he views not just the campaign events, but all of this as a show. And he's looking for people, and he likes people, as we know, who come out of this world of television, who are very capable of going on TV and carrying a message for him. And he thinks that someone like Larry Kudlow will help in that regard in sort of selling what the administration has done. As far as who goes next, inside the West Wing, there is a sort of certainty that more heads are going to roll, just uncertainty as to who that will be. And I think the fact that there are so many problem areas makes it even more of a mystery at this point.
Well, he's right. After Betsy DeVos and what she did on 60 Minutes, you hate to say it, but the only way is up. Evan, the president does have the right. He can fire anyone he wants, but there's this notion, well, he wants to get the cabinet he really likes. He chose the cabinet to begin with. It wasn't like they were holdovers and he got stuck with them.
No, they weren't foisted upon him whatsoever. And the president absolutely can fire anyone he wants for almost any reason he wants. That's his right as president.
It's also his jam.
Yeah, well, not exactly, because he's not done it in person. He's done it over tweet. I wasn't a fan of Rex Tillerson, but the way he fired Rex Tillerson not only was inappropriate, but it's going to create an enemy in Rex Tillerson. I wouldn't be surprised Rex leaks more than the Exxon Valdez.
Isn't that stunning, though? Suddenly, everyone feels bad for Rex Tillerson. You could say the president and Rex Tillerson didn't get along, but to fire him in the way that he did makes absolutely no sense.
And it goes to the whole point of how he can't staff up the White House with these competent Republican operatives and people who understand how the levers of power work. Potential staffers relish the opportunity to work in the White House as much as a dog wants to fly on United right now. That is what that White House is like. It's a toxic environment.
Yeah.
You have a president who undercuts himself. With the Justin Trudeau thing, he admitted he lies, which, okay, yes, everybody knows Donald Trump lies, but he admitted he lied to another world leader. And that creates a problem with every world leader. How are you, as a diplomat or an aide to President Trump, going to be able to explain, oh, yeah, the president's telling the truth?
So he lies to world leaders who matter to us, NATO allies, yet...
Our largest trading partner.
Yet,
Canada.
when you think about those who like him, it's dictator-flavored leaders.
Yes, and Stephanie, I would argue that the president doesn't have a messaging problem. So, in as much as he is attracted to,
he's a great salesman.
Television. No. No. One, I don't think that, and two, I also think it's a policy problem, not a messaging problem. So, you can put Larry up and talk about economic policy. If its policy's going in the wrong way and Larry supports it, Larry's a dear friend. But if he comes out and supports the wrong policy, that's still a problem for this White House. It's still a problem for the country, more broadly. And so I think that, the president may be attracted to the weekend host of Fox and Friends as well, to go over to VA. That's been in the paper this morning as well. So you're hearing all this type of, can we get somebody who's on TV? And Larry happens to be an economist, so that helps. But again, I don't think purely messaging and presentation is a problem. Larry's been arguing the president's case for quite some time. I've argued against tax reform in its current construction because it was ill-timed and I think poorly thought out. That's a much bigger issue than whether or not you can sell it on television to a certain constituency.
Okay, but in order to get to governing, Eli, and you've pointed this out on Twitter, if you're going to replace all these people, they have to get confirmed. Does that not hold us up months and months?
Right, it does. I mean, if the White House was at all serious about infrastructure, and we joke that every week is infrastructure week now, but I mean, if they wanted to do something else in the run-up to the 2018 midterms, now the Senate is just going to be bogged down with confirmation hearings, and these are not a slam dunk yet. Rand Paul out yesterday basically saying that he's not a yes on Mike Pompeo to be Secretary of State or the replacement at the CIA. And so in a Senate that's 51-49 right now, Mike Pence may have to come in and cast the deciding vote. But this is sort of on the head of a pin right now for the White House. And that may be one of the things that inhibits the president at the end from making even more changes. Although I say it may inhibit him because obviously he's not afraid to stir things up, and he loves creating the sort of dramas around the palace intrigue and the White House personnel to sort of just satisfy the media's craving for news.
But hold on. That might distract the media for a moment, but it doesn't change the underlying truths that eventually have to get faced. Whether it's the Robert Mueller investigation, whether it's Stormy Daniels, those stories aren't going away. They may be temporarily put on hold, but guess what? We getting back to them.
But Stephanie, you know what is happening is that deregulation has happened without much coverage in a variety of industries.
Point.
They're going to roll back Dodd-Frank.
Excellent
and
point.
There is some concern that this, however they roll back this financial crisis regulation that was put in place in the wake of what happened in 2008 and 2009 could be very serious. And if it does pass in such a way that banks go back to their very, in some ways, bad behavior that we've seen in the past, we could have another crisis within the next 2 years.
Okay, but
that's
Ron,
not getting near enough attention.
You get what you get, and you don't get upset. People voted
like
for President Trump.
Yeah.
People are having this deregulation jamboree, forgetting that regulation is put in place to protect the most vulnerable people. And there might be ineffective regulation. There might be too much regulation.
Absolutely.
But right now, we talk about regulation like it's poison. It's put there for a reason.
Now I have to defend my party. That's a position in this administration I'm not used to. I think that, yes, there are regulations that are overburdensome. We need to have smart regulation, efficient regulation, so that businesses can thrive, but still have regulations that do protect the most vulnerable and make sure that people are treated fairly. So that's my position on regulation. But the president himself, I think what we're getting to is he thinks it's all messaging. And Ron says that the president's good at messaging. He is good at messaging when he's trying to get on page 6 of the tabloids. But he's trying to basically go out and say, we've done so much. America is now great again because of what I've done. But you can't really point to that much that he's done. There isn't that much going on in the legislative process. When I was actually a resident of a Trump building long before Trump was even on The Apprentice. And It's not a well-made building. It's actually the cheapest parts. They put it together. It falls apart very easily.
He has always said that you put the shiniest stuff where it shows.
But he sells it very well, and he makes you believe. So people believe in it. But when it comes to governing, that's a very different thing. People may believe, and we are seeing polls where 20% of Republicans don't even believe Stormy Daniels got a payout from Michael Cohen, despite Michael Cohen admitting he paid $130,000.
Come on now. Not only did she get a payout, it was Trump's other lawyer that signed off on it. They cannot believe it all day long. It's not going to go away. But in the state of Pennsylvania, you saw Republicans didn't even campaign in the last week on the tax cuts anymore because it is not working for Trump's base.
No, not in the least. And in fact, you can do surveys right now and see how much money from the tax cut is going to stock buybacks, about 60%. How much is going to employees, about 15%. So it is, as we discussed when it was first being contemplated, going to corporations and others, not to the president's base or to middle-class people more broadly.
One quick point is that 40% of the voters in the Pennsylvania 18th district, or pardon me, nationally, believe that their economic situation has not changed for the better or worse, and that's the plurality of all voters.
Are those the people who voted for Conor Lamb because they thought he was like Donald Trump? Are you kidding me with that, President Trump? That's just silly.